All right, we are live. Hello, folks. My name, you know my name. I'm Ryan. That's Niels on the other side. Niels Pflaeging. How are you doing, my friend? It's been far too long since we've been
Yes, we had
on
a little
camera together.
hiatus, right? I think they call it. We might say it's a
Yes.
new season of this podcast that we started in
Yeah.
2023, and when we had a break of 3 weeks, 4 weeks. I'm not sure. Long time.
Yeah. Probably the longest break we've had, I think. So
Yes.
we shall not do that again.
No, no.
So
It's a despicable thing to have
oh,
such a long break. But today we're coming back from this hiatus with two special guests.
yes,
We
two
never had
special guests.
before.
Yeah, I don't think we've ever had a quartet on
Yes.
our show before, so this is the first quartet. Yeah, so our two guests we'll bring onto the screen here. Da-da-da. Ah, this is guest one, Al Bluedorn. Guest two, Ron Purser, are both scholars and authors. Ron, you of San Francisco State, and the most recent book, Mind Space, which we jammed on a while back. And of course, the foundational book that Niels came into with you is, again, the Self-Managing Organization, and that lovely article that you did for Current Affairs against managerialism, which all this stuff is just right smack down the middle of what we talk about and what we love here on Beta Codex Live. And Al, you of Mizzou, yes, Mizzou.
That's right.
Okay, Mizzou, and the Human Organization of Time, having wandered into Niels's consciousness at a bookstore. Where did you find the book again, Niels? Was it there in Wiesbaden or?
It's an excellent question. No, I just definitely didn't find it in any store. I was made aware of it online, and it took a while to get to me, a few weeks to come in from the US. But I don't remember exactly how I stumbled upon it. But the crazy thing is really that I only discovered that you two had worked together on this article that we discussed today. I only noticed that like 2 months ago. I was like, what is this? How can that be that I hadn't been aware of it before? You know, and it made me buy another book of Ron's, 24/7. I think that's the title, 24/7.
Yeah.
A book about time. I had kind of ignored that in the past as well, so I bought that too.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I'm a fan. I'm a fan.
Goodness gracious! All right.
So when I noticed that you guys, Alan and Ron, that you had written this article together back in 2004, more than 20 years ago, I thought this would be a wonderful occasion to bring you back together. But I must admit, it's more than that. I'm kind of addicted to academic reading. I love it, yes. But 70% of the academic writing, I cannot stand it. I think the texts, articles, or papers give you nothing. You as academics might think differently or exactly like that. I'm not sure. So, but I read a lot, on research. Gate, for example, I was looking up some stuff about time. I found your article there. It was downloadable immediately, so I recommend everyone at this point to get this article. The Times of Cause and Flow in Organizational Change. Written by the two of you, Ron, you appear there as first author, then Alan, and with a guy called Jack Petranka, who I do not know so well. I do not know so much about him. And you published this piece in March 2004. March 2004. And I read it, and I was blown away. I think it's a very significant piece of academic thinking and writing. I hope everybody here agrees. We don't have to agree on anything. Maybe minor work in your amazing curricula, Ron and Alan. Maybe you think it was nothing, but I think it's a fantastic piece, and we can talk about why.
Well, as the resident time orientation addict, this just right down your wheelhouse there. I want to first question: why was this article important to you, Ron? Why did this happen? How did you discover Al? Would you bring us back to the ever-present origin of this topic in your life?
Yep, sir. That's a great book too on time. Like Alan, my memory's not maybe as clear as I would like it to be, but It does go back a bit, well, from a scholarly perspective, it goes back to actually Barbara Adam, who Alan knows quite well. She is German by birth, but she was based in Cardiff at Cardiff University. And she was the founder, I believe, of Time and Society Journal, but probably the foremost sociologist, scholar on time. She is prolific, and I kind of stumbled onto her work and attended a conference in Palermo, Sicily, I think the year before, in 2003, May of 2003, and that's when I met Barbara. And I think that's when she told me about Alan's work, and so one thing led to another in terms of making the connections. But going farther back in time, I've always found ways to write what I really want to write about in kind of a clandestine way in academia. And so my real interest was really trying to challenge some ideas about linear causal time that was really taken for granted in the organizational studies, management studies disciplines. And the root text for that is a Tibetan Lama's text, Buddhist text that I've been studying since 1982, called Time, Space, and Knowledge, A New Vision of Reality by Tarthang Tuku, who to this day I haven't found any contemplative or even philosophical work that matches his acumen and originality and radical vision of time. And so the reason why I wrote it is that, first of all, I saw these presumptions and presuppositions about causal time or linear time in organizational theories. And I particularly took aim at Carl Weick because he was sort of the golden calf, the untouchable scholar. And
Who was that?
Carl Weick. Carl Weick, he was a professor at University of Michigan.
Yes.
And also Kurt Lewin, for that matter. Anyway, we're starting to get into the weeds now, but that was really the motivation,
Yes.
for the article.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you for giving us that context. By the way, I will see Barbara Adam in about 2 weeks' time at a conference in Sardinia.
Oh, I wanted to go to that conference.
Yeah, it's
That's great.
Triannual conferences of the Society of the Study of Time, and I will participate for the first time. And one of the reasons I'm going there is to meet her, to see her.
Oh, fantastic! I told her about the conference. I said, Barbara, you have to go to this. You have to go. And I was getting ready to make plans that didn't work out because I wanted to be with her. I wanted to meet up with her there because, as I said, that I met her in Palermo in 2003. So this was kind of like a reunion.
Yes.
So it's fantastic that you're able to meet her. And
you can still come.
Her.
I would like to meet you in person as well. It's just
that might be not quite practical right now. It's coming up quite soon, right?
If you think to, would you please say hello to Barbara for me?
I will do so. Yes. I will definitely. Yes. Alan, what do you remember about how you got into this article together, into this little research project together with you?
To be honest, I don't have a definite memory. Before we went on the air, Ron said that he thought I approached him because what little memory I have, maybe it's my imagination, I have it the other way around. And I'm trying to think, how could this have happened? And I'm wondering if either Dick Woodman or Bill Passmore had suggested this to either Ron or me individually, and then whichever one received that message. And I would just say in general, that might have been more likely to have been Ron, he's much more into the organizational change and development side of things than I was.
Yes.
But and then whichever one of us, like I say, it could have been me,
Yes.
but I'm sorry, that doesn't particularly lift the fog very much here, or solve the mystery. But that's the best I can do.
Yes, and there's another co-author. We should mention him as well, or honor him as well. Jack Petrenka. We have never spoken to him. I never got in touch with him. We both know Bill Passmore, though. We had I think he was the first special guest on this podcast.
I remember watching that actually. Yeah.
So there's a relationship.
He was my dissertation advisor.
Yeah. He told me, and he, of course, he spoke highly of you, Ron. But I already had known your book before, so it wasn't.
Yeah.
We had lovely conversations about Pava as well. What was his first name?
Kelvin
Pava and others from the socio-technical systems movement and so on. Yeah, I learned a great deal from Bill Passmore. So Jack Petrenka,
Jack Petrenka is part of the Nyingma Tarthang-Tuku's community, and he's been primarily the editor for all of the books that came after in the Time Space Knowledge series. There were like 4 or 5, 6 books that were published after the original book, and he worked extensively with Tarthang-Tuku in editing those books. But he's even though he's in the Nyingma community, he's quite a brilliant thinker and easily could have been an academic. In fact, he was going in that direction at one time. But we co-authored not only this piece, but I think another piece in the Journal of Applied Behavioral Science the following year, which was based on this chapter. It was taking it further, and I can't even remember the title of that article now. But Jack's been a great friend. I've known him since 1990, and in those early days, we did collaborate on 2 conferences, one in Boston that you mentioned, and the other one in Fontainebleau, and they were both on time and organizational studies. Yeah.
Another thing that we might mention, Ron, as you were just talking about your interest in the subject of time, when I contacted you again maybe 2 months ago, you mentioned that you are writing a book on the topic of time right now. You want to say something about
it's coming full circle in a way. This is kind of a sequel to the previous book that was called Mindspace, and so this book's called The Alchemy of Time, and it's based on the Time Space Knowledge original book, focusing more on the time section chapters, and it's a really nice. I was just mentioning to my wife that it's interesting how this theme is emerging, even though the book's not out yet. So I found this to be a synchronicity, if we want to use another temporal term.
Yes, sure it is. There seems to be momentum for that book.
It could be. It is a nice way of pulling together everything I've studied going back to when I met Alan, and that's what I'm actually doing in the first part of the book. And I'm organizing the book in 3 parts based on the metaphor of alchemy. So the first part is sort of the diagnosis, and it's called lead, and the middle part is called the work, and then the third part is called gold, the gold, So
lead, the metal.
Right.
Okay. All right.
So the alchemy,
I couldn't figure out why. What does time have to do with alchemy for you?
Right. It's transformation in time, not a theory about time. That's really the work part that leads to gold. But the diagnosis is very much steeped in all of the work that we did in, back 20, 25, 30 years ago.
Yes.
In terms of time famine and temporal scarcity and all kinds of things like that. We can get into temporal acceleration, time-space compression.
Yes.
That, people back as early as 1977, which I just kind of discovered, I kind of put two and two together just the other day. And I think even Alan may have been familiar with the work of Paul Virilio, who's a very obscure French thinker. He wrote a book called Speed and Politics in 1977, same year that the Time-Space Knowledge book was published. So I thought that was an interesting, but it completely, the diagnosis of where we were going. I mean, he was so prescient, so prophetic in seeing where we are now, in terms of our inability to track the social and temporal acceleration that we're all feeling.
Yes.
The so-called polycrisis, if you want to put it that way.
Yes.
It's really a temporal crisis, and AI is kind of the current.
Yes.
How it's developing so fast, faster than our capability to really understand where it's leading. And it's kind of based on the past repository of human knowledge, and extrapolating that knowledge forward at a rapid pace.
Yeah,
So I think you mentioned this, Niels, the technology as savior in your little document. I like that. Yeah, so that was I think we share a lot of the diagnosis.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
So can we go into that fundamental set of assumptions and the diagnosis? I'd love to hear an articulation of the thesis, why this was important and what is the real distinction we're talking about. So I don't know, Ron, if you want to go there, and Alan, if you want to riff off Ron and your view of
Sure.
that too. So so what's the thesis? What's the big deal about time? What are we really talking about?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of ways we can come at it. Going back to how this all started with organizational studies and organizational change theory, we treated time as kind of a constant rather than as a variable. It's just like a hidden factor that's just assumed to be a certain way.
Yes, or a consequence, as I sometimes like to say, right? We assume that things take time, and then the time it takes, the duration, is a consequence, but it's not something that we design or deal with or work with.
Well, Alan goes into this really deep in his book about how deeply institutionalized that most people never consider time could vary in its the way it's understood and embodied, right? Contextualized. The human organization of time was extremely influential. When I read it, I was blown away by it. Yeah.
Like myself. Yes.
Yeah.
Alan, you want to elaborate a little bit on what you think are the key topics of the article we're talking about?
Well, let me just add one thing before I land, is that, time, we shouldn't use the word time. We should use the plural word, times. Right? I mean, we're talking, and it's interesting. Another discovery, I can't remember what dictionary it was, Oxford, Corpus, I don't know. But time is the most frequently used word as a noun in the English language.
Huh.
I did not know that until about a month ago. And it's used as a noun.
Now.
Yeah. Yeah, I know.
Found it in several that claim in several articles, and it is. I thought about it. It's possible and likely even. Yes. Yeah. I think your article is about times. That appears in your article. It seems to be very much taken from your thinking, Alan. So let's prefer talk about times than about time, and maybe as an extension, we should talk more about timing as an activity or as a state of being, right? That's very much what this article talks about. To do organizational development, organizational change work, we should consider it as being in time, not something we do on identities or to preserve identities. That's a very strong concept in the article. It blew me away, but to be in time, which may sound a little bit esoteric at first, but it
sounds esoteric at first, but I mean, this goes back to, we'll get to this because it's so important. Henry Bergson's work is all about that, right? And Alan's work was about polysynchronicity.
Yes. Polysynchronicity, right?
Polychronicity.
Polychronicities, that's it. Yeah, I was searching for that term. Yeah. Yeah. And so when you asked the question, Ryan, about we're really in this article distinguishing between causal time and flow time. Those are the two central ideas that we can unpack. But that's the most dominant conception of time is causal time, and based on identities, based on, that there are things, there are entities, and organizations develop these identities that seem to stand outside of change or the flow of time, right? And the image is the Greek philosopher Heraclitus. Heraclitus. See, my accents are off. That the image of rocks that are just protruding out of a river, right, while the water's rushing past. That's sort of how organizations, the metaphor of organizations that have these consolidated identities, that change is sort of an aversive thing that has to be managed, right? And so, but the rocks are also temporal entities, even though their scale of change is very slow, of course, geographically, but everything is changing, everything is change. And so the idea to say that there's a thing is really an imputation of language, of freezing the flow, as Bergson would say. And we can get to that later. But the notion is that our identity is it's steady across time. Again, when you say across time, that's spatial. That's a spatial metaphor. So our conceptions of time have our dominant conceptions, even of causal time, is more of a spatialized view of time. And so organizations maintain their identities by running these narratives about themselves, stories they tell about themselves, the founding story, and they try to reaffirm that story. And so time has turned into kind of an enemy that has to be, defended against and managed, and so identity needs a sequence as well. It needs a beginning, a middle, and an end to have an identity. Time is causal sequence, which is really getting into the linear idea of past, present, and future. But it goes deeper than that in terms of cognitive maps of time. That here we have a Newtonian grid, where time is just a interval between two static states that are universal. And so anyway, you could see how embedded all of these concepts are, almost deeply metaphysical concepts, which is why we don't question them, because they're so deeply embedded in our histories, in our cognitive history.
Yes.
So almost like managerialism.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Absolutely. Yeah.
Which is of course is an interesting theme in your work, Ron. You maybe as much as you like to question the fundamental assumptions that are problematic and wrong, if that's a thing.
Limiting.
Yes, limiting and even stifling in the world, right? And that cause us problems that we could overcome by having more appropriate, more contemporary ideas about management, for example, as you addressed in the article that we discussed about the last time on this podcast when we talked. That was 2 years ago, I think, yeah, which was a wonderful article. And in this article we're discussing today, this taken for granted assumption that time is causal and let's say constructed of moments that are kind of disconnected and can be analyzed, thus ignoring dynamics and that we produce the future in the here and now and in every interaction. I'm a big fan of constructivism, which doesn't appear in your paper, explicitly at least not, it doesn't, which assumes just the same thing, right? We construct the future in the here and now with every encounter. In every encounter, we make futures actually correctly as well. So in the here and now, we make future, and that appears a lot in the article as well.
Mm-hmm.
This all
to believe as in time as flow. Sorry, I should complete. Brian, yes, sorry.
Well, I was going to say, as I read through this, I saw many of the Beta Codex principles emerging, and I'm one. It's almost like as if you read the book or this paper, Niels, before dividing the principles. This is the idea of the Newtonian progression of time as the complicated. There's state to state, and there's constancy between them. But the complex, the red world is fluid, is flow. That planning is from the complicated, from point to point, from past to present to future, that linear bit. But preparation is something that happens continually. That is response, and all of these ideas are very much supportive of self-organization and this ensemble work together that you talk about. So I find these universal truths that we discovered through this work very, very impactful. I think they have an interesting implication on the foundational assumptions of organizational structures and design. So that the Beta Codex proposes. So, so we have this idea of causal time, right? So I think we've gotten this idea, this pretty well defined, that the baseline assumption of the world at large, that we know about, is this cause and effect kind of cause and effect. This happens because of this, but the proposal that the two of you put forth in the paper was of something fundamentally different. This idea of flow time. So when we talk about flow time, Ron, how would you make that distinction between what we talk about in causal time? And Al, please feel free to just bash us all in the face and tell us to shut up. But no. So I'll say, Ron, first, how do you define flow time as the distinction?
Could I table that just for a few more minutes, and I'll circle to it, because there's a couple more points about causal time that'll help. I think will help illuminate flow time.
Perfect.
Yes.
I was gonna say no, but yeah, sure.
Okay. If I recall, back during that time, Amazon. Let's see, Amazon. Yeah, that's about right. Yeah, back then, there was all the buzz and hoopla about real time.
Yes.
That in real time was this notion of, instantaneous sort of ability to, like if you click on Amazon, you order something, and then boom, you're closing the gap and can, attain the desired result through this kind of digitalization of technology and so forth. And but it's still causal time. I think that was part of the critique. That it didn't really matter that if you can close the gap between the present and shrink it to zero through digitalization, that doesn't. You're still in causal time.
And causal time, as you say in the paper, is rooted in being informed by the past.
Yes.
Deriving assumptions about the future through planning or projection.
Right.
It's really like hallucinating about the future, being informed by the past, and kind of trying prediction and planning and so on with is futile, because of course the future is not like the past.
Well, with temporal acceleration, with real-time digital technologies, the unintended consequence of that is that people are then under more pressure to catch up, so to speak, and so the pressure, the temporal pressure acceleration, then calls for faster responses. There's less of temporal relief
Yes.
That's Virilio used that term. You're reducing the temporal relief as things accelerate. So now knowledge comes into play. How do you respond? Well, what we saw is that organizational actors tend to fall back on learned routines when they're stressed. Cognitive biases, right? So the response that's needed seems to always be coming too late in many ways. It's and so in a way you could say that I think Ellen, you mentioned this idea. I was looking at your book the other day. It was temporal depth research.
Yes.
You got into this idea of temporal depth, that the people who look further back also look further forward.
Yes.
Yeah, something like that. And that a shrunken past kind of yields a shrunken, impoverished future then too. Their depth of field is less, I would imagine that. So I think we quote the scholar Nowotny, and she said the future shrinks, and then it just becomes an extension of the present. So the reason I'm bringing this up is that we're tracing this causal time assumptions. I think we trace it first to Levine's work about the unfreeze, move, refreeze, and that again is a state-to-state model. One state to another state, and then Wyke and I think it was Quinn, another colleague of his.
Yes.
They came up with this idea. Yeah, they came up with this idea of continuous change, freeze, rebalance, unfreeze. That was their way of tweaking Levine, and it looks more dynamic. But our argument was no, it still requires kind of this perch, stepping outside the flow, and we freeze it cognitively. But time doesn't really stop. You don't have that. You don't have that meta position that you can somehow be immune to time's flow by stepping out of it. And so that's where Bergson came in to help us quite a bit at this point.
I love this about your paper that you also quote Bergson, who I had not.
And he's become a lot more popular in the last 10, 15 years. Yes. There's been a real revival of his work. Yes. I mean, I couldn't believe all the books coming out lately in the last 10 years on Bergson.
He seems very contemporary, right? As he is a promoter of dynamics. By the way, can we one thing that I might, if you allow me to mention, one thing that came out in the last 10 years or 15 years ago was the researchers from New Zealand wrote a very popular paper about the fact that Kurt Lewin never proposed the unfreeze, change, refreeze model as a model for change. He did not.
Really? I didn't know that.
That's a wonderful paper. You both have to read it. It's fascinating because I think Kurt Lewin he always was a promoter of flow time, of systems theory, systems dynamics. So this kind of static way of approaching change wouldn't be in his mind. I
always like when people discover those things and then debunk it.
Yeah, they did a careful research into where does the notion of that model, supposed model, where does it come from? And it doesn't come from Lewin. And I bought the book of Lewin, the original book. It's a fleeting remark he makes in one bullet point on one point, but he never suggests that as a change model at all. So that's his kind of wrongly, badly attributed, and we shouldn't bash him for that. From my point of view, Kurt Lewin is another one of these heroes of time-oriented organizing, just as you both are, of discovering that flow is a thing. And of course, flow time, I found it, maybe what triggered me in the article you both wrote, is that it reminded me so much of people like Kurt Lewin, who suggested that with action research, with impacting on the thing, you could influence and learn about it and understand the present / the future. I think it's very related, right? Action research as a concept,
Yeah.
Everything's an intervention. That's very much a flow time idea. I hope I didn't miss.
Yeah, I think everything is improvisational in that respect too.
Yes, you talk about improvisation in the article.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Yes.
We're getting ahead of ourselves, but I want to make
Jazz
a couple more
time.
points.
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
Okay, you have all the points.
I know
That's
we're going to
great.
get to it, but I'm like holding my German Shepherd back when he wants to go play on the leash. It's like,
all right.
Alan, do you want
Can
to
we say something about the causal relationship, the cinematic mode too, like frame by frame by frame?
Yeah,
by frame
yeah.
That hit to me in the head. Yeah,
that's a good metaphor. And Marvin Weisbord hit it on, really hit the nail on the head when he talked about the metaphor of snap shooting, like taking snapshots, right? And that's related to Bergson because he said you can't constitute change or movement out of immobilities or static states. So one of the famous lines, what was form? Oh yeah, he wrote a lot about form, and this is very Buddhist, very, very kind of Buddhist philosophy. That form is only a snapshot of a view of a transition. That was a famous Bergsonian phrase. Form is only a snapshot of a view of a transition. That's a profound perceptual sort of insight.
this is
That our language reifies movement. Our language freezes, you could say, flow or time. But it's useful for biological survival in order to be able to distinguish objects and things in our realm of perception. That it's a useful cognitive perceptual ability that we as biological species need to survive. However, that is only one time. That is only one way of perceiving phenomena. See, and that's where we get into the richness of the diversity of times or diversity of ways of knowing, for that matter, because they're related. They're related. Like indigenous cultures, they have a very participatory view of the universe and engagement with phenomena, living phenomena. And they're embedded in time. The way they tell time, if you want to even use the word tell time, what does that mean? They're in time so deeply that phenomena are time. Phenomena are speaking to them about what does this time mean? What is that time? What is this time, you know? And the clock took us out of that embeddedness. It took us out of that natural sort of diversity of times. So I'm getting off track here, but we're trying to get to the flow time, right?
Yeah. Well, but you went into clock time, and Al, I'm surprised, Al, you didn't come in and bring back the 13th century and about how time was, mechanical time came about. So
was that Bennett? Was that the Benedictines who started that, Ellen, or was it even prior to that?
I couldn't tell you what monastic order, but it did come out of the monasteries or maybe the church in general,
right?
To want to be able to measure time accurately enough so that the prayers, the canonical prayers, could be performed at the appropriate times of the day. And I think there were 7 of them originally, or so, but so I don't know when you're 1,500 years ago, something like that, or 1,300 years ago, so somewhere in there, it got started. And of course, it was just with clocks that had no hands; they were just bells. And I believe that's where the word clock comes from. It comes from the German Glock, which Niels, is that in German a bell?
Yes, Glocke. Really, but
like in Glockenspiel and
Glockenspiel. Yeah.
But that's, I think, the etymology of where we get to the English clock is from the German Glock, and because it was just bells originally in the monasteries and so forth.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah.
By the way, nobody tells this story of how we unified time on Earth and what were the steps that at the same time harmonized life on several levels, but also deprived, what Ron, you just said, a process that also started to deprive us of times, of our own times, of diverse perceptions of time and notions of time. When I visit Bolivia for the first time, I also heard about traditional assumptions about time, which the pre-Columbian people in Bolivia also assumed that time was circular, for example, which at the time just made me frown. I couldn't make sense of it. And I think that richness of thinking, of course, Alan, in your book, you describe very well how we lost that over time, over the course of history, with that fixation on exactness first and synchronicity, making times the same, and from the calendar to the clock time and so on, and now with this passion or asphyxiation, of speed, velocity, and acceleration, which prevails, decades. Right.
And I'm wondering that leads also. Are we talking about entrainment as well? Isn't it? It feels like this entrainment, and then there's this idea of control on top of entrainment, which kind of leads to the idea of managerialism, and we have to manage time because we have to keep things in control. This is so fundamentally embedded that there's an addiction to control that comes out of a definition of time, and it's like, this is deep stuff to unwind. So that's.
Yeah, I mean, think about Greenwich Mean Time and getting the railroads to synchronize, and then the atomic clock comes online, and finer abilities to measure time that without those GPS comes online, and it was just like really important to computers. So you can trace this kind of measurement and control of time through starting with let's say the monasteries, and that's what Barbara Adams' work does, and that's what Alan's work has done quite elegantly, and so we're at a point now where like we said, we've lost these more. I was thinking about time disorders as you were, Ryan, because people who work like night shifts, they're not entrained to the natural rhythms of the day, obviously. And I used to work night shift a long time ago. It was rough, and there's lots of incidents of people having more accidents and health problems and so on. But even sleep now is for a lot of people a problem, which is crazy. It's just a basic need for sleep.
Compression of time gone to the nth degree.
Stare of screens and.
Ron, I want you to let the German Shepherd out, man.
Okay, let's play.
All right, so we've talked about the fundamental assumptions of causal time. So the distinction is variable, is flow time, is improvisational. So please let's make that distinction. Woof woof. Come on, German Shepherd.
I have a new German Shepherd. That's why it's on my mind. All right. So we can say I'll go right to the chase. That flow time is more future centered, but with a very different way of knowing the future. And so usually when we think about the future, we think about it spatially as being directionally up ahead of us, somewhere ahead of us. And we're planning for the future by extrapolating from what we know from the past. But the future, if you look at the real nature of the future, it really never arrives, right? It's a very uncanny kind of intangible feeling that if it arrived, it would be the present. But we certainly know there is a future of some kind. It's just that we're not in touch with. You could say we're not engaged in an embodied or in a conscious way because we're so conditioned by causal times assumptions about the past, present, future nature of the directionality of time zero that is only moving unidirectionally from the past, present to the future. But this whole different way of thinking about flow time is hard to grapple with it initially. But it goes back to the Bergsonian idea that things are constant change. Things are constantly in dynamic movement. And so that dynamism, you could say, is at the edge of the future and the present. There's a dynamic, vibratory, how could I put it, potentiality that is not determined. It's indeterminate. But it, time does kind of, at some point, become the past. We're not denying linear time. We're not negating it. But if flow time is sort of a middle ground, you could say it's a way of engaging with this dynamic nature of the future dimension. And this is why the arts like jazz is such a beautiful metaphor. The idea of leaning into that unknown future and deriving energy from it, deriving creativity, inspiration. You could say, it's sort of like the muses, however you want to put it. We could go all different directions, but and that's the notion of deep improvisation that we talked about in the article, right? And this is not just simply an agile planner who can just turn on a dime. That's not the image that we're talking about here.
Yes.
Deep improvisation is acting without leaning on the claims of the past or one's identity, and without imposing a pre-established conception of what should be. Right? It's kind of being possessed by that arriving of the future that doesn't really materialize, or you could say condense or become concrete into a form. It's kind of staying in touch with the transitioning nature of time, the dynamic transitioning nature of time. And so, yeah. And that's sort of, go ahead, Alan.
Please,
interject or add something here. When I reread the article for the first time in almost a quarter century, about 3 weeks ago or so, it was when the article got into a discussion of, for example, scenario planning, which at first glance, you might think, well, that's an improvement in everything. But I'm going to keep referring to him in the third person here because I don't know who the ideas came from for sure, I suspect, but that's still in the linear causal time kind of mode for thinking about things. And this led to the thing that really resonated with me in that discussion of scenario planning was scenario planning, probably like just even non-scenario planning, if you will, but scenario planning, whatever scenario you're looking at, you are dealing with virtual knowledge. That was the phrase, and that's a beautiful phrase, which really comes back to you. You are not dealing with real facts or so, without getting into a debate about what is reality or not, but you're not dealing with what we would customarily consider truly factual information for the most part. You may be extrapolating from things that'll be very close to it in linear time or whatever, but it's all, if you will, imaginary.
It's conjecture, yeah.
You are visualizing what might be or something. But I think then, to go back to an earlier word that Ron used in the planning process, that probably becomes reified. and
Mm-hmm.
and it becomes to be looked at as real. That's really what's going to happen, at least if that is the correct scenario. And that does suggest that a task and scenario planning would be to find, well, which one of these is the most likely, i.e., the most real scenario for what's going to happen. And I go back to an old sociological axiom, if you will, that was first, the guy's name was W.I. Thomas, very early in the 20th century, who said, and I'm going to put this into more modern language, that situations people believe are real in their consequences. In other words, how you define the situation, that's how you're going to react to it. Your behavior will be consistent with that definition. And of course, if your definition is a scenario, that's what your reactions, emotional, what we might call cognitive or decision making or behavioral, it will all end up being consistent with that definition by and large. And that's why I think that's such a wonderful phrase. You're dealing with virtual knowledge. And here I'm going to say that has to have been Ron's work. I don't think it was mine. I think that particular insight, I think I would have remembered had it originated up here, but instead I think it originated over there in Ron, and just it's like a warning label. Okay, if you're going to do this kind of planning, you know, it's like the warning on a pack of cigarettes. You know, this may lead to disease if you think it's too real or something like that. But just that was such an, I don't know, it was like a eureka moment or something. It's just, that is really profound. And I'm pretty sure it came from Ron.
It could have been Jack too, but yeah, but you really that scenario planning, it's just like visioning. You know, that was that made me sick to my stomach. I got so tired of all this visioning, future perfect, and that was sort of traced back to Will Schutz's work, The Future Perfect, and that's the same idea. It's the same idea of that. Yeah, visualizing these scenarios is a act of faith, imagination. And like you said, it's like creating a map, but that map may not be the territory once you actually things actually unfold, and you're relying on that map.
And if I know Dwight Eisenhower said this, and I'm sure many other military people have too, which is you go back to traditional planning, and of course the military does all kinds of planning and contingency planning. And Eisenhower had said, that plan lasts until the first contact with the enemy. and we could move that over to our discussion here and say that plan lasts until the first contact with the future. And
and that reminds me of Mike Tyson, a famous heavyweight champion. That planning is, I'm paraphrasing, but everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face.
That's what Eisenhower was saying.
You knew it. Ooh, right. It almost this whole thing, doesn't this go back to Tuku as well? Time, space, and knowledge. That the concept of knowledge is there, it's fluid. I'm trying to get back. That space in and of itself is kind of an illusion, because we create the space. That you said, that there was something you said about that is just a perspective, that your view of yourself and the reality around you is just kind of a view, and that to me, I was trying to find it in the book, and I couldn't find it in the book. But these things are all, they're coming as they're all flow time. Everything is always present. It's always here, and there's not a most perfect futures. There's perfect. What is the most perfect future? Perfect,
Well, Tarthing took in another one of his books, Dynamics of Time and Space, which is very, very deep into improvisation. He goes deep into improvisation in that book. But he talks about this term, which I love. Instead of the future perfect, he calls it the future infinitive. And that is going back to what we were saying, how the future never arrives. It has a dynamic, and that dynamic is very alive. It's fluid, like you were pointing out. It's not a static state image or some scenario planning document that's been sitting in a shell in a drawer somewhere. No, we're engaging with the future in a way that the time itself is a carrier of knowledge. In the sense that you are in touch with in the time itself. And so the more one directly can experience the dynamic of time, the more knowledge it can carry as a fluid, as kind of a responsiveness, an intuitive capacity, perhaps. So it's not just in time knowledge. You could say it's just in time knowledge that it's not knowledge that arrives just in time, but knowledge that just arrives in time. I know that's a bit cryptic, but I know.
There's other things
A jazz musician would know what I'm talking about.
I think the opposite.
You know what to do in the moment because somehow you are like, I don't know, you're tuned in.
Because you've prepared. You haven't. Yeah, I haven't planned every note necessarily.
Yeah, but you let go of that preparation as well. That identity, right? That you're not relying totally on that as a plan and how you're going to improvise.
Well,
if you're relying on a plan to improvise, then you're probably not improvising.
You're going to be kicked off the stage. I mean, there's another philosopher, Vinnie Colaiuta, who I would bring in, the great drummer, that he said thought is the enemy of flow, right? So that the thought gets in the way of that being in the moment, being in time, but the listening and the playing, all that stuff must happen in an integrated fashion. And right now in this moment, that if I'm thinking about what note I'm going to play, the right time to play that note has already passed.
Oh, yeah.
You know, the same thing happens in athletics. They'll speak of a player, he's thinking about it too much. And so rather than just doing reaction, like I use basketball, that the player is, you could even see it physically. He's thinking too much about whether to take that 3-point shot or not. And then he takes it and he misses because it's not in rhythm. It's not holistic. He's stopped to rationally evaluate, is this the best thing I can do for my team right now?
It's not in the groove. And again, talking about a beta codex principle, groove here too, Niels. I'm trying to tell you about it.
I sense that we are talking about that you ultimately this matter of relying on knowledge just in time or just in time knowledge is about retraining our reflexes and being confident enough to act in the here and now instead of making grand plans.
Carrier of knowledge.
What you explained, Ron, is that if we look at flow time like this, leaning into the moment and the here and now and acting instead of making plans, then what causal time would force us to adapt is learned helplessness, right? Causal time would create this kind of detachment from reality, right? Which is something that I have seen over the last 25 years. I've seen in many organizations. People plan, managers plan, and try to steer, but that makes them detached from the real dynamics, and they become totally hopeless and helpless in a way, and ineffective as well because they don't act upon reality.
Very alienated.
Yes.
And I think.
By the way, this was one of the greatest things in your article. I must say that you articulate so well the sadness of causal time, so to speak.
Wow.
Yeah, the detachment from time and how we suffer from it in organizational development and change, which is the focus of the paper, but maybe in our lives too, right? I thought that was
Oh
very
yeah,
powerful.
absolutely. Even more so today than 20, 25 years ago.
Yes, it has become
Yeah.
stronger. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Ron, I want to bring in one critique before we go. You made an aha for me that puts into this in perspective about appreciative inquiry.
Oh, what did I say? I can't remember.
Well, you said,
it's in the article as well. Everybody can read it, but
there's a difference between the dreams the dreams of the future. There's all this dreaming that happens,
visioning, dreaming,
visioning and dreaming and that. But what we're really talking about is this appreciation that comes from the heart, that comes from within. That was what I saw in your articulation of it. So that appreciative inquiry used in this way of defining these future perfects was less effective and less, generative than appreciating what comes from within. So if you don't remember it, that's cool too. But I saw that and thought it was.
I think I also used the Martin Luther King example about having the dream, but it was really more, I was trying to use that as a
what you say in the article is that it's not the dream as envisioning the future in Martin Luther King's speech, but it's that him having a dream is the point.
Being possessed by the energy of the dream. Yeah.
Yes.
That I think
the direction
that resonates exactly what you're saying.
Possibility in the here and now. Yes.
Yeah.
Might I provide another example of the point about needing to interact with the future and so forth going along rather than just by rote carrying out a plan. And I'm thinking, both Ron and I have been teachers for a long time. I don't do it anymore, but and then Niels and Rijon, I presume you conduct workshops and things like that, which is a form of teaching too. And it occurred to me during the discussion here, okay, when is it necessary to change the plan, if you will? Okay, you've got your notes laid out, what you want to do in that class. Now, I've taught all sizes of classes, and I spent a lot of my time teaching large lecture, and we're talking, 500 students at a time or so. And I'm thinking there, I stay close to the plan. Usually, there's very little deviation from that plan. But then you get to what I'd consider a normal size class, let's say 30, 35 people or 20, in that range or so forth. And so there's more interaction going on. And that's where the plan is not followed as closely as it is when I'm talking to 500 people. Because there's very little, there's still interaction there. They may or not laugh at my joke, or they, they may go into what we eyeball defilade, as the military would call it. The eyes, some of them are asleep or something like that. Hopefully that's in a minute. But there are forms of communication, but it's not like when you go to a regular size class. And then when you go to a seminar size class, let's say 5 to 10 people, the whole purpose of that is supposed to be interaction. None of the parties are supposed to be lecturing to each other. And to me, that seemed a lot like this idea of dealing with the future and things. You do have a plan or you have goals at least, and maybe you have ways you think you're going to get to them in general, but then you're going to have to decide, just something comes up that you hadn't thought of, that some student raises. Or whatever, or the class as a whole wants to take you in a different direction. Let's say you make the mistake of talking about polychronicity first, rather than temporal depth or punctuality, because as I mentioned in our last session together, once you talk about polychronicity, you'll never get them back. Everybody wants to stay there and discuss it for the whole hour. So rearrange the order, but just things like that. There may be something, for some reason, somebody really wants to pursue a topic that you hadn't planned on pursuing in greater depth. And then you have to make a decision, since you are kind of the leader of the group. What are you going to do? You're going to go with that, or are you going to stay with what you need? And frankly, I tended to lean towards, if the class is really interested in this and is still pertinent or relevant in some way to the class, let's explore it a bit, because they're more motivated to learn. But anyway, I thought that occurred to me, a few minutes ago in our discussion here, and that might be a concrete example people can kind of relate to.
Very much so.
Definitely.
And I think
Definitely.
we have all experienced how we can fail in pursuing the plan when we are tempted to follow the plan that we had, and how it can destroy the positive dynamic, and how deviating can sometimes not just, it can even save a situation, but it can lead to which is why the teaching is the most learning intense activity in the classroom, probably, right? Because when we lean into that and allow that to happen, then research can happen, actually. Insight and learning and research can happen, right? So,
And I guess
Great.
I'll give my favorite example was teaching an MBA class, and I do what are called experiential exercises. You might think of them as role plays or things like that. And I had one that's nicely designed to teach some organization theory principles, and it totally blew up. The results didn't come out the way I want. And I remember that class took possession of that result and used the theory, the concepts and principles it was designed to illustrate, and they used them to explain why that particular time it hadn't worked.
Oh,
That was one of the most magical classroom episodes I've ever been associated with.
Well,
Yeah,
it doesn't all sound like open space to me, but
Yeah.
It's those emotional experiences that really do sort of you don't forget. I know what you mean. Yeah, definitely. I think one point about flow time that is worth mentioning
Yes.
is that it could be, let's say, overly simplified or misappropriated. What's the word I'm looking for? Co-opted by, you could say, kind of wellness culture or resilience
The
consultants, whatever.
mindfulness movement.
Mindfulness, yeah, it lends itself to be, oh yeah, we're just going to go with the flow and stay agile, and it turns into another one of those stupid platitudes that it's bullet points in some sort of popular book. But
Yes.
I think that it's not just the one more technique to keep up with acceleration, flow time.
Yes.
It really isn't. It's not a way, like you said, with mindfulness was more of a timeout from time. It was more of a timeout rather than a transformation. And so flow time's not a coping strategy for you could say causal temporality. We're really trying to understand the nature of time's potentiality that goes deeper than causal time. And hey, look, I've just been reading I've been going over popular books by physicists, like Carl Rovelli and Julian Barbour.
Yes, I read the same. Yes.
Yeah, I think we talked about that once, but there's, like, in physics, time's not even it could go either direction. It's not in a deeper level of physics, not Newtonian physics, but
Yes.
but that doesn't negate that we have an experience of linear time. We do. Obviously, we do. But
I think
flow time is a experiential, you could say, way of challenging the nature of causal time in ways that are beneficial to our quality of our life, quality of organizations, society.
Yes. I think why I got so triggered by your article here is that flow time, it only makes sense, it's only powerful and meaningful in encounters, in relationships, in human interaction. That's where it makes the whole difference. Flow time, it's not like time management, the fad about optimizing time for yourself, or optimize your use of time. It's about really in the encounter taking. A few weeks ago, I was in Milan for an event, and that event was facilitated by an academic from Bocconi Business School, famous Milan business school. And in the conversation before the event started, he kind of tagged me as being a subjectivist. And I hadn't much encountered the term, but it sounded negative to me,
Sounds like idealism or something. Yeah.
Yeah, I tried to, and he said, subjectivism, in his framing, that is like, you have your, it's his framing of what I would call constructivism. We construct our own realities, right? But if we turn that into subjectivism, that I have the reality and you have your reality, and we cannot encounter or integrate, then it's just another mindfulness technique or bullshit, or feedbacking, lazy feedbacking.
What about intersubjectivity?
Exactly.
Right.
This flow time concept that you write about in the article, it's about taking the moment seriously and taking the encounter and the relationship and the being in this time, and to make this experience emerge just in time. It requires a seriousness. That's why Rijon and we are so in love with the open space formats, the large group formats. Future Search, of course, is a predecessor, another of these technologies or techs, But it doesn't mean that let's spend time together in a nice way. It's about okay, let's relate with engagement and in the light that we can change the future, our futures and our times, if we take this encounter seriously and make the most of it, and then we can.
Yeah, I like the idea you mentioned. Did you use the word serious? Serious?
The word serious, yes, serious.
Yeah, I would add to that a conjunction of the word play. Serious play.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
or play seriously.
Yes.
As
when we come to play as jazz musicians, you're a pro. You come to play. We're here to play, and that's.
You play blues, right, Ron? You're a blues musician.
Blues and rock, yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm not at Ryan's level of jazz. He's way beyond. He's a real musician. He actually.
But blues is very serious too.
Yeah, it's deep. There's a lot of depth of improvisation there.
There is. Oh yeah, blues is very improvisational and feeling oriented, engaged. Yeah. But the point I was making is that the idea of engagement, there's something really. We talked about the jazz mindset, I think, in one of our last conversations way back. I think in our first conversation, and I think there's something to that. This openness. This openness to experience does not. It sort of allows us to bracket our assumptions and our biases and explore the unknown without fear and that to me is relational, like you said. Mm-hmm. When that happens in a relational environment, then new things happen. Innovation happens.
Yeah. Yes. It's liberation there.
Liberation.
You're invited into something whenever it starts is the right time, whenever it's over, whatever happens is the only thing that could have happened, wherever it happens is the right place, be prepared to be surprised, all this kind of stuff, connecting passion and responsibility without coercion. That's open space. And that's why it works. It really works when you bring people together who really, really, really want change. And the folks are invited in, they choose it. And that's chosen agency, which is all these lovely words.
Yes.
Yeah, and agency is an interesting term. I think that getting back to intersubjectivity and getting back to the idea of identity that we were questioning the reification or the fixity of identity, that kind of opens up this notion of agency then. Because agency is much more verb feeling to me than it is a static noun word. You know, it's something that's moving. And I like the idea. I'm a big fan of Peter Hershock's work. You should look him up sometime. He, even though it's Buddhist, but he has this book called Liberating Intimacy. But what I love about his work, and he's a musician, by the way, too, a really good one, is that he draws so deeply on the metaphor of improvisation. And he talks about social virtuosity. Social virtuosity. It's a beautiful term. And that if you look at the early Chinese Buddhist encounters between teachers and students, they were exchanges and dialogues, very intense engagements. And he said that awakening and liberation is a social event. And that's why he brought in this idea of social virtuosity. It's not an agent, it's agencies. Interactions of agencies. Yes, just like time. Yeah. So in a way, David Bohm's work also kind of bears on this, because he talks about the holo movement or the holo flux, which is in the implicate order of reality, that everything is again, it's very Bergsonian again, and that we only impute and reify what we label and point out as objects and things, but they're all in movement. They're all part of a unified holo movement. And he was toying with, later in his life, he was toying with the idea of what he called the Rio Soma. And Rio Soma was his way of coming up with a new language that would preserve the agency verb nature of language, so that we would not bottom out on nouns. It was really weird stuff, but I don't know much about it. But maybe some languages don't do that. I don't know. But anyway, I'm way off in some tangent land here, so I know we're over time.
No. We got to go full in. You got to go Werner Erhard, with all changes linguistic. That's one too. Okay, so we're on quotes. There's one that we hadn't mentioned that I think it was worth mentioning. It's like the whole banana is like, you talk about seize the day. You seize the day. Right? I control time. You seize the day. And what you're talking about is like the day seizes you. It's instead of you seizing the day seizes you.
I think that was Alan's phrase. Yeah.
Well, whoever it was beautiful. I think it lays right into it. So don't seize the moment. Let the moment seize you. So, thank you, Alan.
Yeah.
All right. Well, is there anything, again, here we are, 80 minutes, but we could go another 80, I'm sure. Alan, Ron, was there anything that you wanted to bring to our conversation today that you did not get the chance to do?
I'm good on that score.
Yeah, I feel real complete and nourished by this conversation, and I'm so elated that you're going to see Barbara Adam again. That's just I really wish I could have gone.
I will report back to you both about it.
Well, it's the beginning of a lovely quartet. It's almost like the Miles Davis quartet with Williams, Mark Carter, Herbie Hancock, all that kind of good stuff. Cool.
By the way, everybody should read the article, The Times of Cause and Flow in Organizational Change by Purser, Bluedorn, Petrenka, published 2004, but still timeless.
Timeless. It's timeless.
It's a timeless piece and very timely.
And by Mindspace, newly released by Ron Purser.
I don't have that. Okay. And we are looking forward, of course, to the alchemy. Time is alchemy. Alchemy is time.
The alchemy of time. Yeah, maybe in about a year.
Alchemy of time. I hope that Alan might decide to write another book as well about the topic of time and organizing. Not to put any pressure on you, but we would like to see it and discuss it.
But we are putting pressure on you. All right, gentlemen.
All right.
Been a dream, been awesome. Been a dream and the stream. Thank you
conversation.
all for the precious gift of your time and attention. And for those of you out there, thank you for the same.